Everyone, and welcome to the Pokemon Elite Championship Series. I am Josue Crimz Rojano here with somebody who needs a nickname pretty badly, Jeremy Jallen. All right, guys. So we're bringing to you a brand new series. It's going to be a 5-week long tournament series featuring 8 of the world's best Pokemon TCG players, and they're all from North America.
Yeah. So some of the best of the TCG players. We don't want to exclude a lot of the Europeans and other stuff like that.
I meant to say 8 of the best North American players, but I said world, so I just rolled with it, all right? All right, Jeremy. So let's actually start talking a little bit about the players and dive right into it, okay? Because these are some players that really, some of them do need an introduction to the general population of Pokemon players, and some of these players have been household names for years now. So let's actually look into the bracket, actually, and see exactly who these 8 players are and who they're going to be playing against in this first week of competition.
All right, so we have 8 players total, and it's going to be going on for 5 weeks. So 4 weeks, it's just going to be 4 different 8-player brackets.
Okay.
And then we'll be taking the first place in points. So the way the points work is every win you get 10 points. If you win a finals, you get 5 extra points.
Okay, so you can win up to 35 points per week.
Exactly. So the way it works is after the 4th week, we take the person in first place who has the most points. They'll get a bye into the finals.
Okay.
Then we'll take 2nd and 3rd place, and they will have a playoff, and then the winner of that will go into finals.
Okay, so 4th and down, no good.
No good.
Okay, so you want to be in the top 3 player positions. And so just to make sure that everybody gets it, you accumulate points throughout these 4 weeks. The 5th week is specifically a 3-person playoff. You can earn up to a maximum of 35 points per week, and you can earn a minimum of 0 points in a week, which just means you lose in your first round. It's a single elimination bracket. So now that we know kind of how this point system works, and I hope you guys followed along, let's actually get to the players. The first player on the bracket is somebody who's a YouTube personality and has actually earned a World's Invite already. That's Squeaky Marking. Can you tell me a little bit about Squeaky?
Yeah, so Squeaky runs the Team Fish Knuckles YouTube channel, and he provides quality content to all the players. He provides deckless interviews, and even games himself of streaming PTCGO and stuff like that. And he's gotten his invite for the 2nd year in a row, and he's just been a really solid player.
So this solid player is facing, it's almost safe to call Dylan a legend of the game nowadays. Dylan Bryan has been just unstoppable in the last few years. He's dominated the North American scene, and he's one of the 8 players that we have in this tournament series.
Yeah, for sure. Basically, anytime you go to a Nationals or Worlds, you almost always expect Dylan to be in at least the top 16. He has such a great resume, and he's also been one of the creators of a lot of the decks that we see in the metagame through each year.
Yeah.
He helped come up with Donphan. He played Kling Klang to a top 8 at Nationals this year. And I know he didn't create that, but he helped pilot it a lot. Evolutions, he played that before it was cool. He's just done so much. And he is 3rd in the North America this year.
Yeah, right behind Jason Glazinski and Chase Maloney. So third going into Worlds is an incredible feat. And yeah, he's known as one of the players who's really been one of the best innovators in this game. I know that going into Nationals and Worlds, he's always one of the people that we as commentators like to scout, just because we know we can expect something different from him. And hopefully today is no exception. However, on the other side of the top half of the bracket, we have Britt Pybus against Brandon Cantu. What can we say about these 2 players?
All right, so just like Dylan, both of these players have their Day 2 invite for Worlds, which is a huge accomplishment. Top 16 in North America has been so hard to pull off.
Yeah, of course. There's only 16 players that can make this top 16.
Brandon is ranked 7th, and Britt is in the high teens, I believe, or the low teens. And Britt, basically the same consistency that we see from Squeaky and Dylan. He definitely hasn't really broken out into top 8 Nationals, Worlds kind of thing. But he's consistent winner at states, regionals, all that stuff. And basically, he's gotten his invite ever since he's been playing, really.
Yeah, he actually took me out at nationals on his first year of playing, in a pretty infamous match. Which, I mean, we don't have to dwell into it, delve into it, but definitely he's a player who I've known for quite a few years now, and I'm excited to see him playing Day 2 of Worlds. And it's going to be interesting to see one of these two Day 2 Worlds competitors be out in the first round and earn 0 points on their first week here.
Yeah,
Now, yeah.
The whole top 8 bracket is randomized, so every week they'll be playing someone that they haven't played before. Just kind of spread it out. And going to Brandon, he's a player from Texas, which Texas is a big place, Houston, San Antonio area, and he's the quiet horse kind of thing, like
The dark horse, yeah.
the dark horse. Yeah, people don't really know much about him, but if they know him, they know he's really good.
Exactly. I mean, if you're in the top 16 in North America, you have to be doing something incredibly right. Not just a little right, but something incredibly right. And it's going to be awesome to see him really show the world what he has to offer in this 5-week tournament series. Now, on the bottom half of the bracket, we have another household name, really, Kyle Sablehouse, a player who has not only made a name for himself throughout the years as one of the most dominant players. I was about to say in the Midwest, as one of the most dominant players in the game, but he also has become a pretty big streamer when it comes to Pokemon.
Yeah, the Sable stream, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's really fun to watch. Kyle's great personality, even better player.
That's actually arguable. He's such a great personality that
Yeah, like-
as good a player as he is, he might even be a better personality.
All right, he's a terrible player, great personality. His brother's really a lot better.
But yeah, all jokes aside, he's an incredible player, and we're excited to see him featured in this 8-man bracket. However, he's going to be playing against maybe the best in the West, Israel Sosa. See, that's a cool nickname to have.
I take offense to that. Oh my gosh. I think all of California will take offense to that too. I think Christy Britton might have stolen that crown.
Exactly, and I can't state that enough. That before Christie's incredible run through this season, Israel was regarded as one of, if not the top player in the West Coast. Sorry, Jeremy, but his 3 regional run, his triple crown at regionals last year was just. There's no way we're ever going to see anything like it again.
Chase Maloney did come close. He won 2.
Yeah?
And a Nationals and a States.
Sorry, not enough. That is not a triple regional, triple crown, all right?
But I also got to throw in that I finished with more championship points than Israel last year.
This is not the Jeremy happy hour, all right? We're talking about these 8 incredible players, and I am super excited to see Israel Sosa represent the West Coast here. And he's going to be going up against an incredibly difficult opponent in this first round. Now, at the bottom side of this bracket, we're going to be seeing Ryan Sablehouse against Russell Lepar.
All right, so Ryan, I think, needs no introduction. He's the better Sable brother, and
Throwing daggers.
Yeah, he wins regionals every year, gets second at nationals, streams along with his brother. They just
Yeah, he's the
They're
second
so
half
good.
of that Sable stream,
Yeah.
right? He's the second half of that Sable stream, but on top of that, he might be the most dominant player in the game. I mean, if it wasn't for Chase's epic season this season, Ryan Sablehouse would probably be known as the best player the game has to offer right now. But Chase is
other than,
making
Jason Klasinski.
well, I meant right now as in like the current tier of players. Obviously, Jason Klasinski is the all-time greatest of all time, right?
Yeah.
The GOAT. But Ryan Sablehouse has just been on a tear. I mean, if you start talking about invitational wins, he's got a couple of them. He's won 2 invitationals in a row. This is another invitational. He could be going for the trifecta. On top of that, he wins regionals like none other. He always seems to be in the running at nationals and worlds. He's just an insanely competitive player.
For sure. He's just really, really good.
Well, what about Russell?
All right, so Russell, if you don't know about him, he's basically the guy helping Dylan test everything. And
Okay.
So he's also had a part in Dawn Fan. He's the one who helped make Flygon Excelgor as big as it was last year, and he's been in love with it ever since. He still can't let it go. But Russell is a really consistent player. He was in top 32 going into nationals, and has his invite. Unfortunately, not the day 2 like Ryan, Brandon, Britt, and Dylan, but we all can't be in the top 16.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's earned an invite already does mean that he's obviously got the chops to really be able to hang with these big boys, right? At the same time, he's also, I mean, we said Brandon Cantu was the dark horse. I would argue that Russell's the dark horse here. I would argue that Russell stands the most to gain from a huge series here. And if he can pull off a top three feat, then at that point, you have to assume that he's just going to become, I mean, he's going to be at the tip of everybody's tongue going into Worlds, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
That's one thing that this tournament is hoping to help with, too, is that it's 5 extra weeks of really quality playtesting that these people will get going into Worlds.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are the 5 weeks leading up to Worlds, right?
Yeah.
So now at this point, the winner of this tournament has to have so much momentum going in their favor. And even if you take second or third place, you have so much momentum in your favor because you've just defeated a huge series of players, and this is no easy feat. To take even third place in this tournament would be an incredible accomplishment for any of these players, and I'm sure that they're all gunning for it. So I'm excited to see how this first week unfolds. I just know that after seeing these deck lists that we've seen, there's a lot of tales to be told.
Yeah.
And so actually, let's let the viewers take a look at the deck list, because we've talked a lot about the players, but let's talk a little bit about the deck lists that we get to watch. So let's start off quickly with Kyle Sablehouse's choice on going with Seismitoad EX with Manectric EX.
Yeah, it's the list that Christy Britton used to top 8 nationals. It's a list that Russell actually made and won 2 states with.
Okay.
So it's a very good list.
So actually, you know what? One thing I do want to mention is these guys are not married to these lists for these 4 or 5 weeks. You do not have to stick to this one list every week. They can switch it up. They can choose any deck they want to choose. It's just what they feel is going to be the best choice on any given week. And Kyle decided to go with this Manectric Seismitoad deck. Now let's take a look at the next deck. Now Ryan, on the other hand, his brother, chooses Kyogre EX. Not a deck that I would have expected, but it's a deck that definitely has a lot of power going.
For sure. If it hits the right matchups, it can just streamline wins like that.
Yeah, it steamrolls opponents when it has matchups that really favor it. For example, Seismitoad EX can't really deal with rough seas and whatnot. So, for example, if Kyle and Ryan do face each other, which they can, they're both in the bottom side of the bracket, then, I mean, you would have to figure that the matchup favors Ryan, right?
Oh, for sure.
All right, now let's go to Dylan Bryan's list. Dylan Bryan chose to go with a Groudon EX. We just saw Kyogre EX, now we have Groudon EX piloted by Dylan Bryan. Dylan chose to go with this deck list on top of any other deck, and Primal Groudon has a pretty cool matchup against Seismitoad itself.
Yeah, the Omega Barrier ability makes it so it's unaffected by any trainer cards. So you can't Lysander the Groudon, the Primal Groudon, you can't Laser it, you can't Crushing Hammer. A lot of the stuff that like Seismitoad decks usually play.
All right, so now let's take a look at Brandon Cantu's list.
So Brandon is playing Evolution's Raichu Crobat deck, and without the Crobats because we didn't do it on the thing.
Somebody screwed up the Crobat deck list, but anyways, he does play Crobat in his deck, and this Evolution deck seems to be primed and ready for. This is actually the kind of deck that I would have liked that I like to see in these 5-week tournament series. A deck that your opponent obviously is not going to expect out of you. A deck that you might be able to just kind of sneak a few wins in here with and earn yourself a good chunk of points.
For sure. All right, now we're going to go to Israel Sosa, and if you know Israel, you know what he's playing. And it's Yveltal, of course.
Even the picture.
Yeah.
Even the picture has a big old Y. That's the Yveltal right there. Yveltal, the man has made a name for himself piloting the dark Pokemon, and he wanted to start week 1 off with a bang. He knows what he likes. He knows what he's good at. And he knows that's what's probably going to give him the best shot at getting himself some points. However, his opponents have to assume that he's probably going to be playing Yveltal, right? That's got to be a consideration for them coming into training deck.
It's a definite disadvantage. For the first round for the top 8, everyone goes in blind. You don't know what your opponent's playing. But then for the semifinals and the finals, they actually have their opponent's deck list. So it's something that Pokemon hasn't really done before. They just did it at Nationals where they printed everyone's deck for top 8 before top 8. But I think it adds an element to the game that usually isn't there.
Absolutely. You no longer have to wonder if your opponent plays a Sacred Ash. You no longer have to wonder if your opponent plays a Xerasic or anything like that. You now know, and now you're working with semi-perfect information. Much more information than you're used to. So for sure that's going to come into account. However, the fact that that Israel always plays decks like Eviltal and Darkrai and whatnot really does have to weigh on people's minds when they're turning in deck lists. You definitely don't want to play a deck that auto loses to it, for example. So now let's take a look at Brit's deck.
All right, so Brit is going with essentially I think is the same or close to the same list as Chase Maloney won Canadian Nationals with.
Okay, so a tried and true deck list.
Yeah. Metal is really primed in this format, especially if it faces a bunch of the Crobat decks.
Okay.
Any decks that run low on energy and use double colorless, Aegislash is going to have a field day with. Heatran is a really good non-EX attacker. Dialga shuts off Seismitoad, actually. Dialga's first attack makes it so Seismitoad can't attack next turn. Might get out of Trainer Lock. And even the Kecleon and stuff. Like, it's just a really well-rounded deck. It's very consistent, and I'm not surprised to see this choice by Brit.
I'm not surprised to see a metal deck in these 8 players deck list. So, matter of fact, if anything, I'm surprised we only see one of them. So actually, unfortunately for Brit, he's going to be facing a Flareon deck in the first round.
Oh, yeah.
We already know his matchup is going to be against Brandon. We've seen Brandon's deck list. Brandon's Flareon deck has a great matchup against Metal, and it's going to be interesting to see if Brit can pull off an upset here.
All right, and then here we go to Squeaky Marking's deck.
All right, the Squeakster himself is going to be playing a Blastoise deck. That's also not something you see every day.
Yeah, there was a Blastoise that top 16 Nationals, and I think this is the list. Why not go with a proven deck already?
Exactly.
Proven list, even though if it is a little strange. It is something that can be so explosive out of the gate that turn 1 Archies to get a Blastoise, dump a bunch of energy on KLDOEX. There's really not much that can come back from that.
No, there isn't. There's got to be a lot of pressure that's going to be taken, put in from Squeaky's side of the field if Squeaky gets a nice strong start on against his opponent. And Dylan is going to have a very difficult matchup in his hands with his Groudon EX deck.
For sure.
Finally, we have Russell's deck. Russell is going to be playing Flygon, a deck that you actually said that he's in love with. He's been in love with since last season.
He will not let Flygon die. He actually played it 4 Nationals and run into some bad matchups to where he didn't make day 2. It's actually a pretty good deck. He has a really good list. But he is up against a brick wall against Ryan Sablehouse.
Oh, no. He does play against Ryan Sablehouse. And Ryan, like we said, plays a deck that wins and loses by its matchups. And Ryan specifically has the Rough Seas to get rid of all this area of effect damage from Flygon. This is brutal.
It's probably a 0 to 100 matchup in Ryan's favor. Like, it's not
0 to 100. You're assuming Ryan's already assumed.
Yeah.
Ryan's already made the semifinals, according to you.
Essentially, like, there's no way Flygon can beat Rough Seas.
That's unfortunate for him. I mean, let's assume he is the best Flygon player in the world. He might be. He very well might be. I mean, especially if he's loved this deck for so long, then he has the best shot of anybody to really be able to pull this matchup off. But he also has to know exactly how fragile and how awful this matchup really is for him. So
yeah, especially since Kyogre can one-hit the Flygons.
Exactly. Yeah, this is just not good. It's not going to be pretty. And hopefully we see Russell emerge with a surprise victory here. But Russell, the dark horse of the tournament, does have an awful matchup in round 1. So now that we've seen the 8 deck lists and whatnot, I actually want to jump right into our first round match. I'm excited to get this tournament started. The first round match that we're going to have is actually going to be Kyle Sablehouse against Israel Sosa. Israel, like we mentioned, the best in the West. Sorry, Jeremy. Or one of the best in the West. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Against Kyle Sablehouse, the Sable Stream himself. Kyle against Israel. Who will emerge victorious? We have Seismitoad against Yveltal.
Well, we have a Manectric Seismitoad against Yveltal Manectric.
That's a good point. We have Seismitoad and Yveltal, but that's not it. We have Manectric on either side. Obviously, Manectric tends to be pretty good against Yveltal.
It's one of the reasons why Yveltal doesn't see as much play.
I believe we actually just saw Rock Guard on Kyle's side of the field come into play on turn 1. That's not something you see every day.
Not at all. This was in Chrissy's list. Of course, Rock Guard made top 8 of Nationals, if you didn't know. It is very good with Seismitoad EX. If you could lock Rock Guard in play and get that Quaking Punch going, they can't really do much other than just attack you, and that's so much damage that builds up.
So, obviously, being the first turn of the game, he did not attach a double colors to be able to just pass on it. He doesn't want his opponent to get a free energy removal if he has one. However, he also does not have a good supporter in his hand either. He only has AZ, and obviously AZ is not what you want to see here. Now, Sosa, on the other hand, does have an Ultra Ball, finds a Manectric EX, and if Sosa's going to have any type of shot at winning this poor matchup, it's going to be by his opponent just kind of stuttering here.
Yeah, for sure. He does have the Shadow Circle, which is really important in the matchup. It's the one way Yveltal can combat Manectric EX. And he does have a computer search for what I imagine is Juniper.
Juniper gets him 7 new cards, and already having a Manectric EX, having a Darkrai EX, which gives your Pokemon free retreat, and a Shaman just drawing him an additional 2 cards after dropping an Yveltal. He's in a prime position to really take advantage of this game, and it's up to Kyle to really draw his way out of this.
Yeah, and he did not. He drew a Zubat. So he's going to be able to evolve into Golbat, attach DC, and Quaking Punch, which is really good. It'll force Israel to attach an energy to the Darkrai, to retreat most likely, or just even keep him up there. Because the thing with Baby Yveltal and Manectric, you don't really want to attack into a Rock Guard with only the 1 energy attacks.
That's right.
That's where Rock Guard really shines. When your opponent's doing 20-20, and you're doing 60 back to them.
So another thing to note is that the Rock Guard is just going to stop Israel from doing anything besides attaching an energy and passing. I mean, he doesn't want to do anything to this Seismitoad that isn't going to really put pressure on him. And now, even though Kyle doesn't really have any energy, or he doesn't really have any supporters or anything like that, he really doesn't need him.
He did top deck a Juniper, though.
Oh, never mind. He top decks a Juniper.
But you're right. He doesn't need it, so he didn't play it.
Yeah.
He just AZ'd to get extra damage from Golbat.
That makes perfect sense there. And the AZ gets put to good use before he gets discarded. And now another Juniper from Sosa. And
we
he's
see the
finally
big
started
Mega Manectric. A card that's usually just in a deck by itself. It's not really splashed into other decks before. But it's really good here, building up Darkrai, building up Yveltals. And Israel's trying it out today in this tournament. And so far it seems to be pretty good, but it does have 120 damage, 130 damage on it.
Yeah, it does have quite a bit of damage on it thanks to that Rock Guard. But on top of that, even though the Quaking Punch doesn't really do too much damage, the fact that Rock Guard's going to get multiple uses out of Kyle is just really going to put this Mega Manectric in a bad position against Seismitoad.
Yeah, right now it has 150 damage on it because of Quaking Punch and the Rock Guard and all the Golbats. So if he wanted to attack with that Mega Manectric, it would have been knocked out.
That's right. So now the Darkrai actually attacks. Darkrai attacks to knock out the Seismitoad. And that's actually a great move.
Yeah.
Israel Sosa knows exactly when to attack with Darkrai, apparently. A Pokemon that never receives any real play, at least not in the active position, is getting its licks in against a Seismitoad, and it knocks out the Seismitoad for the first 2 prizes of the game. First 2 prizes of the match go to Sosa.
Yeah, it's definitely looking in Israel's favor, but he has so much damage on his board, and it's really just a simple cleanup of Crobats that could really pull the game ahead for Kyle.
That's right. Now, we saw a Crobat become evolved and actually put 3 more damage onto the Manectric EX. The Manectric has to be getting pretty close to getting knocked out.
That is 30 left.
Yeah, 30 left. That's what I assumed. And now a single Crobat will knock out this Manectric from here on out.
We see a scoop up. If he gets heads...
Tails on the scoop up does not allow him to knock out this Manectric this turn. He could have evened the game up. But he does have an Ultra Ball. the Ultra Ball can find him the Crobat if he'd like.
So he can get the Crobat for the automatic knockout, gets 2 prizes. Or if he has a Shaman, he gets Shaman. But it looks like he doesn't have the Shaman.
No Shaman, still gets the Crobat. The Crobat
I still
will draw
like
him a
the
couple of
Crobat
prizes.
play better.
Me too, especially because it's going to draw you a couple of prizes, so you can always draw a supporter. It's an N, but still, it's an N here does
And
let
you're
you...
getting 2 more prizes.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even remember about the Quaking Punch knockout.
Yeah.
Quaking Punch is going to knock out the Darkrai, and that's 4 prizes in one turn here from Kyle.
And that's because of Rock Guard.
No kidding. A card I did not expect to see in this entire series shines in the very first game of this tournament series.
And now Israel's charging up his benched Yveltal with a baby Yveltal.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all he can
yeah.
do right now. At this point, Kyle wants to start finally finding the Manectric, and it's a Pokemon that honestly didn't really need to see play earlier in the turn or earlier in the game for him, but now it's going to shine.
He also doesn't really want to laser the active, just because you don't want to kill the active. You want to kill like the Shaman on the bench or something like that.
Yeah.
But with his hand and the awkwardness of the supporters he has, it's better just to kill the Yveltal and then try to like knock out the X. But you really don't want to play the 7-prize game that often.
That's right, but he does decide to actually AZ one of his Crobats into his hand in order to be able to deal additional damage with his bench Zubat. And now he's putting damage onto the benched Yveltal EX.
So by bringing up the Crobat, he's going to be able to laser and deal 60 to the Yveltal. And then he's actually didn't attach the Muscle Band. Because he could have done 80, 110, and then knocked it out with the Golbat.
Yeah, that's right.
Coming into his turn.
So that's an interesting play, but now an N is going to punish him. He's N down to a 2-card hand, which only includes a Crobat that's relevant. Wow. This is huge, actually. He doesn't have a way to keep the consistent stream going. He's going to have to start using, like, Sky Return or something. Oh, Versus Seeker Top Deck.
Oh my
the Versus Seeker Top Deck will allow him to draw out of this hand. And that was a huge and timely Top Deck if I've ever seen one.
So, I'm expecting Juniper.
I would expect Juniper as well. I mean, you do have other options which are fine, but you're obviously not going to end yourself to a 2-card hand. But AZ might have been all right. But no, he does go with the Juniper after he does... after he decides to grow out. One thing he does is he benches a Seismitoad instead of relying on a potential Manectric EX at some point.
Well, the deck only plays 2. One was gone, right?
I believe one was gone. I think there's still one left. Could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong before.
All the time.
Once or twice. So now an Ultra Ball is going to actually tell us whether there's a Manectric left. There is a Manectric left. Never wrong. All right, so now he's choosing between Golbat and Manectric. I believe he's going to go with the Golbat after all. He's already chosen the Seismitoad route here. But, yeah, okay, so he does go with the Golbat. He can evolve it at any time. But now he's going to go down to a single prize, I believe.
Yeah, I still would have liked to try to set up that Yveltal to be knocked out going into his turn so he can put more damage on the other Yveltal EX or something else that Sosa brings up.
Yeah. I'm with you. So now, instead, he is going to probably just rely on the Quaking Punch to put enough pressure on his opponent's hand and not be able to allow him to use items and try to find that one last prize somewhere else. Remember, Sosa still has to get 4 more prizes. That's no easy task when you're Quaking Punch locked.
Well, he does get 2 this turn, and I don't think that...
And his opponent to 1. And his opponent to 1. Does not have anything relevant in his hand. A Versus Seeker again! Another Versus Seeker does allow him again to draw out of this top deck, or out of this end. That's incredible.
He also does have a DCE on the Shaman, so he had an attack at least. But...
Yeah, he had an attack. It wasn't going to be a great one, but it was an attack. Okay, wow. So now another Versus Seeker found him another Juniper. The Juniper gave him so many options that I don't even know what he wants to do at this point.
He's going to Sky Return this turn for sure.
Apparently you know what he wants to do, because he is Sky Returning. He is going to be dealing 50 damage to that Yveltal and returning that double colorless up to his hand.
Because that's the biggest one. I think that was his last double colorless. He wants to keep it in his hand so he can Quick Punch next turn.
Will we see another N? If we see another N out of him, this is huge. There's no way he's got it anymore.
If we see another N, I think Israel might take this one.
Sardling Megaphone is relevant. Does get rid of the Muscle Band. I'm just trying to figure out if he's got an N. If he's got an N here, then Sosa can still pull this off. He needs an N, though. He's already been top decked twice. There's no way he can get top decked again, right?
Yeah.
It's just not possible. I mean, nobody's that lucky.
Well, it is Kyle Sablehouse.
All right, so now, is he slow rolling the end? Or is he really just out of options here? Muscle Band gets attached. Again, another one. Are we going to see an end to 2? I don't even know what to say anymore.
Yeah, like, if he doesn't have the end, he can't have the Yveltal active because he knows his opponent has the DCE. I guess if he, we know he has the Muscle Band.
Juniper, he does not have the end.
Oh, man.
He Junipers instead. Wow, okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Headringer does actually bring up a few more options for him because now his opponent can just attach a Double Colorless and a Quaking Puncher.
Okay.
An early Versus Seeker.
Because he's afraid of the Quaking Punch.
So I guess he is afraid of Xerasic with Quaking Punch.
Because Kyle can still Quaking Punch. He has the Seismitoad in hand. So he can bench Seismitoad.
You're right. You're absolutely right. He's not forced to attack with the Seismitoad that he currently has in his bench.
And we just saw Kyle check Mr. Mime. I think he might be going for the Mr. Mime kill.
He might be. He does activate the Mr. Mime with the Lysander.
Oh, man. I didn't see this. Crobat does 60 plus the Muscle Band, so it's 100.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh.
The weakness. The weakness. He does knock out the Mr.
Game
Mime.
in hand the whole time. We just didn't even notice.
That's right. I mean, it's not like you expect Crobat to be attacking anytime soon, you know? Wow. So, Crobat does get him the final prize against the Mr. Mime. Not something you expect to see every day, but it happened. And now Sablehouse accidentally queues up against another opponent. So we're actually going to be taking a look at their deck list for a little while they figure out how they can play each other again. Kyle Sablehouse with the Manectric EX not really being relevant at all against
Rockguard put in a lot of work.
Yeah, it was Rockguard and not Manectric that really won him that match, or that game.
Yeah. And the thing, though, he does have quite a few supporters, so those top decks were a little called for, I guess.
I'm sure that he had a great chance at top decking out of it, but top decking twice is just huge.
Yeah.
It's not something that you expect to see. You don't even expect to see it on the first turn. So he just had the fortune. Fortune was on his side, and he managed to pull off game 1 in what honestly seemed to me was going to be a much more lopsided matchup than it ended up being.
Yeah, and let's see if Israel will pull it out with his Yveltals and Manectrics. And that Mr. Mime giving up the game, too.
All right, so now Israel Sosa against Kyle Sablehouse. Kyle is up 1-0 against Israel. Will he be able to close the series out and earn himself 10 points?
Yeah.
For either of these players to be out in the first round and losing and being stuck at 0 points at the end of week 1 has to be incredibly disappointing for them. And it's not something you expect to see.
It's a shame that any of them have to because they're all such great players.
Correct. Now Israel does get to go first in this game too, and he attaches an energy right away to his Yveltal.
And he ended away a pretty good hand from Kyle, but he still has a good hand. With anytime you draw an Ultra Ball in this format now, you're like, all right, my hand's pretty good. Thanks to Shaman.
It's really difficult not to have a good hand, honestly, nowadays because of Shaman. So now, I guess we could put it in a certain way, as in Kyle didn't get unlucky. And Kyle's hand is perfectly playable. He does have a Quaking Punch available to him. If he wants it.
DCE Laser Verbank Toad.
Perfectly playable.
Perfectly playable. With
Not
a Shaman
the greatest
draw
hand
6.
of all time, right? Not the greatest hand of all time, but it's
pretty good. I mean, he's going to be drawing 6.
It'll do.
I guess
now
the bad thing is
he
he had to discard a Golbat.
Oh, the poor soul.
Yeah.
That poor guy. Okay, so now we see a Hypnotoxic Laser actually land heads. That's pretty cool.
And he got the Rock Guard. Oh, my heart.
Your heart just skipped a beat. Another Rock Guard on turn 1 from Kyle. And that's just a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare of your Sosa.
It is not looking good at all.
What's also a nightmare of your Sosa is if you stay asleep. No pun intended. A Juniper from...
Okay.
Yeah. A Juniper from Israel does allow him to draw additional cards and start powering up a Manectric.
But he's going to get this Yveltal knocked out soon, and that's never good.
Yeah, exactly. So now Seismitoad can keep the Quaking Punch lock going from turn 1 on. Israel is just in a world of hurt here.
I guess the one saving grace is that Kyle didn't draw like a Golbat to put extra damage on. Like,
That's true. Awful hand from Kyle.
yeah, awful, terrible. He should quit this game.
Quaking Punch again continues to lock. Israel has a 5-card hand and needs to keep powering up the Manectric here if he wants to put any type of pressure onto the Seismitoad. An early hand from Israel does draw him an additional 6 cards.
Now Kyle has a bad hand.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as far as hands are concerned, it's awful. He does get to start powering up a Manectric, though, if he wants to. Headringer, honestly, not the greatest Headringer. He can attach it to the other Manectric if he'd like, but
I mean, that's pretty good when Israel plays the Mega.
that's a good point. That's true. Israel does play Mega Manectric here in this deck list and doesn't just keep it as a regular Manectric EX.
Like Kyle does.
Exactly. So that's true. He does attach the Headringer onto the Manectric EX, potentially stunting that one.
So the Yveltal is actually still alive.
For now.
For now.
I think once he passes, it actually gets knocked out.
Yeah, it is. Because Israel replaced the Verbank with the Shadow Circle.
Yeah. So now actually he retreats the Yveltal and finally deals damage onto the Seismitoad, 110 damage, but takes 60 in return.
Oh, man, that's huge. And one thing that actually is the saving grace for like a Toad Crobat deck is when you're actually trying to knock out the one Pokemon.
Yeah.
If they retreat it, doesn't matter. You still have Crobats to clean up your damage.
That's a good point.
But unfortunately, Kyle hasn't drawn any Golbats. He discarded the one early on.
Yeah, he discarded the one early on and never drew another one. His hand does not have any supporters, or any relevant draw supporters anyway. And he's forced to just Quaking Punch again. I say forced to, but honestly, that's not too shabby itself.
Like, we're going to probably see a retreat from Sosa, bringing up the other Manectric and knocking out the Toad.
So that Toad does go down, and we see only a Manectric EX on Kyle's side of the field for now. 4 prizes against 6. We saw this earlier. Now a Juniper from Kyle does breathe life back into his.
This is a heartbreaking Juniper because you never want to discard 2 Crobats.
You know what would be more heartbreaking is if you had to pass after getting your Pokemon knocked out. So as heartbreaking as it might seem,
but he is knocking out the Mega Manectric with his own Manectric thanks to the Spirit Link on it.
Exactly. So that's actually a great point. Is that because of that Spirit Link, he does get to knock out this Mega Manectric. Now,
actually, this Manectric can knock out every one of Sosa's attackers.
That's what Manectric does against Sosa's deck.
Yeah.
You know, Manectric just it's at its finest against Sosa's deck.
Yeah, this Headringer will put in a little bit of work depending on, just because Kyle plays 7 energy total.
Yeah,
he already has 2 lightning and a DCE gone, but he gets end into a DCE. So
yeah, and not to mention that this is now Sosa's second end of the game, and these are ends that you don't particularly want to see happen. You don't want to end yourself to 4 and your opponent only to 4.
Yeah,
this is. I mean, you saw how strong N was against Kyle earlier, and it forced him to top deck to really stay in the game. Now Kyle gets to attach another energy to Manectric if he'd like.
I think he might just do the 2020 attack, or he's going to retreat and Quaking Punch. Those are both the options to him, but if he retreats, he's going to take a longer time to charge up that Manectric again.
That's right. We finally see a Golbat here on Kyle's side of the field. And the
That's
Golbat,
big.
Yeah, the Golbat gets to knock out the Yveltal. Exactly. Golbat getting to knock out the Yveltal without having to attack is huge, because now it puts you at 2 prizes against your opponent's 4, once again taking the lead after being down early in the game. And now if you knock out this Yveltal, you go down to a single prize, and once again, the Mr. Mime sitting on the bench getting knocked out whenever you'd like.
That would be hilarious if we see both games end by that Mr. Mime getting knocked out.
It can happen. I mean, really, that's realistically probably Kyle's best out of just winning this game outright. All he needs is a Crobat, really, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This is just an awful spot for Israel to be in, and it's just a bad matchup altogether.
Oh, yeah.
So now Israel trying to find his way out of this situation. He does have a heavily damaged Yveltal, and now he ends his opponent to 2, which is good, while only drawing 4 cards himself. A scoop up, though, from Kyle can actually turn this game... Well, I'd say turn this game completely around, but...
Can keep Kyle going for the winner's seat.
Yeah, instead he doesn't land it. But he does knock out the Yveltal, goes down to a single prize, finds an Ultra Ball.
So we're going to see Crobat next turn if he has the third one in his deck.
That's right. Crobat on... a Crobat can definitely come down whenever he'd like at this point. Israel only has a single end left in his deck and obviously some Versus Seekers. But Versus Seeker can't be used against Quaking Punch. Lysander finds the Manectric EX that's been hiding for who knows how long now, and it finally gets knocked out. Sosa goes down to 2 prizes.
So his out is basically...
Versus Seeker again.
My God.
Versus Seeker again out of Kyle Sablehouse. The most timely Versus Seekers in the world this match.
I need these Versus Seekers.
These are legendary, epic Versus Seekers, really. The Ultra Ball can find Kyle any Pokemon he'd like. I'm assuming it's probably going to be Crobat.
I think he actually wins. He Ultra Balls for Crobat, deals 30 to the Mime, Versus Seeker for Lysander, bring it up, and Quaking Punch.
You're right.
Out.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, man. That Mr. Mime.
That Versus Seeker.
Yeah.
That Versus Seeker once again finds the Mr. Mime. The Mr. Mime is going to go down a second game in a row. Quaking Punch knocks out Israel Sosa's final Pokemon. And that's it. 2-0. Kyle Sablehouse advances to the semifinals. Israel Sosa has to just sit here, arms flailing in the air, wondering if his deck choice was the right one for this series, as he now leaves week 1 with 0 points.
He's just going to go eat his churros in disgust.
Eats his churros in disgust. You said it yourself. All right, guys. Stay tuned for more from this Pokemon Elite Championship Series.